They didn't judge Ethan for what he did. They judged him for who his brother was. It was the first thing whispered in the hallways when Ethan stepped into Westwood High, "That's the kid whose brother just got out of prison." The words traveled faster than wildfire. Nobody cared that Ethan had never broken a single rule. To them, his brother's shadow stretched over him like a brand he could never scrub off. Ethan, however, wasn't the type to shrink in silence. If someone threw a jab at him, he had a sharper one waiting. When a classmate muttered, "Better check your pockets, he might steal your lunch," Ethan shot back without missing a beat. "Don't worry, your lunch is safe. I wouldn't even touch it with gloves on." Laughter erupted from a few nearby students. The boy who mocked him turned red. That was Ethan's survival weapon, words sharper than fists. But no matter how clever he sounded, the whispers never stopped. In math class, he noticed her. Her name was Lily. She had dark hair tied back in a braid and the kind of smile that lit up when she was talking with her friends. Ethan caught himself glancing her way more often than he'd admit. But every time he thought about saying something, the same thought froze him: what if she knows about my brother? What if she thinks I'm just like him? During lunch, Ethan sat at the far end of the cafeteria. A group of kids at the next table leaned together, whispering. One boy stage whispered, "Bet he's already planning his first heist." Ethan stabbed his fork into his food and muttered just loud enough. "If I were planning a heist, you'd be the last person I'd recruit. Can't steal with butterfingers." The group went silent for a beat before bursting into laughter, this time at the boy. Ethan smirked, but the victory was hollow. Wit could win moments, not battles. That evening at home, his brother Mason was sprawled on the couch, flipping channels. Mason was taller, rougher, his arms marked with tattoos that whispered of bad decisions. Yet when he looked at Ethan, there was something softer in his eyes. "How's school?" Mason asked, though he already knew the answer. Ethan dropped into a chair. "Same as always. Apparently, being your brother is enough to make me a suspect for everything from missing pencils to world domination." Mason chuckled. "Well, at least you inherited my charm." Ethan rolled his eyes. "If by charm you mean lifelong suspicion, then sure." They laughed, but beneath the humor, the truth lingered. No matter how much Ethan joked, the weight of his brother's past followed him into every classroom, every hallway. And as he lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, one thought echoed. "It doesn't matter what I do. They've already decided who I am." He didn't yet know that soon, one accident in the hallway would turn those whispers into accusations so heavy they threatened to break him. By the next week, the whispers around Ethan had only grown sharper. It didn't matter that he hadn't done anything wrong, the rumors fed themselves. And then came the accident that nearly sealed his fate. It happened on a Tuesday between classes. The hallway was packed, kids pushing through the crowd, lockers slamming shut. Somewhere near the middle of the chaos, a loud thud echoed, followed by a painful cry. Everyone turned. A sophomore named Kyle was on the floor clutching his arm, his face pale. Within seconds, a teacher rushed over, and someone yelled, "He's hurt." His arm. The hallway froze. Then came the question that would change everything. Who pushed him? Kyle shook his head, wincing in pain. I didn't see." That was all it took. The silence broke into murmurs, and every eye began to swivel toward one person. Ethan. He felt it immediately, the weight of their stares, the unspoken verdict forming before anyone had proof. "Bet it was him," someone whispered loudly. "Yeah, who else would do something like that? His brother broke bones too, didn't he? Runs in the family." Ethan's jaw clenched. He opened his mouth, ready to fire back, but then he caught sight of Lily standing on the edge of the crowd. Her eyes weren't accusing, they were searching, as if she wanted to believe he wasn't guilty but was afraid to say it aloud. That look hurt more than all the whispers combined. The teacher helped Kyle to the nurse's office. The crowd parted, but the damage was done. Ethan's name was already sealed to the accident. Later that day, Principal Hayes called Ethan into his office. The man's tone was clipped, his gaze sharp. "Ethan, I want to give you the chance to explain. A student was injured. Several others claim you were near the scene." Ethan leaned back in the chair, crossing his arms. His voice dripped with sarcasm. "Oh, great. Trial by rumor. Should I just confess now to make it easier for you?" The principal's lips pressed into a thin line. "This is serious. If you had anything to do with this." "I didn't," Ethan cut in, his tone suddenly hard. "I didn't touch him. But let me guess, no one saw what happened, right? Just whispers. And since I'm the felon's brother, that's enough." The silence in the room was suffocating. Finally, Hayes sighed. "Go back to class. But understand this, Ethan, when these kinds of things happen, perception matters." Perception. That single word burned in Ethan's mind as he walked back down the hall. It didn't matter what was true. It mattered what people thought was true. By the end of the day, the story had twisted into something worse. Some students swore they'd seen Ethan shove Kyle. Others claimed they'd heard him laugh afterward. Ethan wanted to scream at the absurdity of it, but instead, he used the only weapon he had, his wit. When one boy muttered, "Better watch your back, thug," Ethan shot back. "Don't worry, I'll only push you if I'm aiming for an upgrade in personality." The group went quiet, some snickering under their breath. But Ethan knew words could only do so much. The rumor had already taken on a life of its own. That evening, Mason noticed the tension. "Rough day?" he asked. Ethan dropped onto the couch. "Someone got hurt. And guess who they all think did it? Me." "Of course." Mason raised an eyebrow. "Did you?" Ethan glared at him. "Seriously?" Mason held up his hands. "Relax, I'm kidding. But if they're going to see you as the bad guy anyway, maybe it's time we have some fun with it." Ethan tilted his head. "Fun?" A slow grin spread across Mason's face. "If they're going to be scared of me, we might as well use it." Ethan couldn't help it, he laughed. For the first time that day, the tension cracked. Maybe Mason was onto something. If the school wanted a villain, maybe they'd give them one. The day after the accident, Ethan walked into school knowing the whispers would be worse. And he was right. The second he stepped into the hallway, voices dropped, eyes narrowed, and footsteps shuffled just a little quicker past him. "That's him," someone muttered. "He's dangerous. Just like his brother." Ethan forced a grin, throwing back his usual bite. "Careful. Talk too loud and I might start charging rent for living in your heads." The words landed like little darts, enough to make a few students snicker nervously. But the tension didn't leave. No matter how clever he was, the label clung tighter every day. That night at home, Mason leaned back on the couch, arms behind his head, watching Ethan pace. "You can't keep playing defense," Mason said. "They've already decided you're guilty. So why not mess with them a little?" Ethan arched a brow. "Mess with them? Like what? Sign autographs as the felon's brother?" Mason grinned. "Not bad. But I was thinking something better. If they're scared of me anyway, we give them a reason. Nothing bad, just enough to make them sweat." Ethan tilted his head, a slow smile creeping onto his face. "Go on." The plan was simple, ridiculous, and completely their style. Mason scribbled a note in jagged handwriting, "Don't touch my little brother. M." They slipped it into a random locker after hours. The next morning, when the student opened it, his scream echoed down the hall. By third period, the entire school was buzzing. "I heard Mason left a warning. He's watching us." "No way," is that real? Ethan kept his face straight, but inside he was laughing. During lunch, he caught Lily's eye across the cafeteria. For the first time in days, she looked at him not with worry, but with something else, amusement. She knew. She had to know. The fun didn't stop there. Mason showed up once after school, leaning casually against the fence near the parking lot. A few kids spotted him, tall, tattooed, arms crossed. By the time Ethan got home, the rumor had already grown. Mason was patrolling the school to protect his brother. Ethan chuckled as Mason recounted it. You didn't even say a word. Didn't have to, Mason said with a shrug. Sometimes silence does the job. For Ethan, it was the first time he felt like he wasn't drowning. The fear that surrounded him twisted into something new, respect, or at least hesitation. People still whispered, but they did it farther away, softer than before. Of course, not everyone was impressed. John, the school's golden boy with a cruel streak, wasn't buying it. In the hallway he sneered, you think hiding behind your brother makes you tough? Newsflash, Ethan, you're still just a scared little kid. Ethan smirked, firing back without pause. Funny, I didn't realize you had a mirror handy. The nearby students burst into laughter. John's face darkened, but before he could reply, the bell rang. Ethan walked off with a little extra spring in his step. Still, when he sat alone that evening, the laughter faded, and reality returned. He couldn't rely on Mason's shadow forever. Pranks and witty comebacks gave him relief, but the truth remained, his classmates still believed he had hurt Kyle. And unless the Real story came out, no joke in the world would clear his name. By the end of the week, the prank had already become a legend. Some students still eyed Ethan warily in the halls, whispering about the mysterious note. A few even gave him space, just in case Mason was really watching. For the first time, Ethan could breathe without feeling like prey. But relief didn't last. Kyle returned to school with his arm in a cast, and every glance in Ethan's direction was filled with blame. The story had grown in his absence. People claimed Ethan had shoved him in cold blood, that he'd laughed when it happened. Every time Ethan passed Kyle, he felt the weight of eyes drilling into his back. That Friday night, the tension boiled over. Ethan sat at the dinner table, poking at his food without eating. His foster mother, Diane, set down her fork, her voice soft but firm. Ethan, talk to me. What's going on at school? Ethan looked up, the sarcasm gone from his face. What's going on? Everyone thinks I broke some kid's arm. They don't care what I say. They only care that Mason was in prison once. To them, I'm just his sequel. Mason, sitting across the table, flinched at the words but stayed quiet. Diane sighed. Honey, you can't let them get to you. You know the truth, and that's what matters. Ethan pushed his plate away, anger bubbling up. No, it doesn't. The truth doesn't matter when everyone's already made up their minds. Do you know what it's like to walk into school every day and feel like a criminal before you even say a word? The room went silent. Finally, Mason leaned forward, his voice low. I do. Ethan froze, meeting his brother's eyes. Mason rarely spoke about his time inside, but now there was no humor in him, only raw honesty. I know exactly what it's like, Mason continued. And I hate that you're living even a piece of what I went through. But you're not me, Ethan. You don't have to prove them right. Ethan's throat tightened. Then what do I do? Just let them keep calling me a thug. Mason's jaw clenched. No. You stand your ground. You fight back, not with fists, but with who you are. You're smarter than me, sharper than me. If they want to see you as me, then show them the difference. For once, Ethan had no sarcastic comeback. His brother's words hit deeper than he expected. Diane reached over, squeezing Ethan's hand. And if it gets too much, we can consider other options. Maybe another school, a fresh start. Ethan shook his head firmly. No. If I leave, it's like admitting I'm guilty. I'm not running. Mason smirked faintly, pride flickering in his eyes. That's the spirit. Later that night, as Ethan lay in bed, Mason's words echoed in his head, "You're not me." For the first time, Ethan wondered if that was true. Could he really escape the shadow of his brother's past? Or would he always be the kid judged for someone else's mistakes? By Monday, the tension had reached its peak. Kyle still walked the halls with his arm in a cast, and every time Ethan passed by, whispers followed like shadows. Some students made a point to step out of his way. Others smirked, as if just waiting for him to snap. But the worst of them all was John. Tall, loud, and smug, John wasn't satisfied with whispers. He wanted a show. He wanted to be the one to prove that Ethan was exactly what everyone thought he was: violent, dangerous, his brother's clone. It started in the cafeteria. Ethan sat at his usual spot near the back, stabbing at his food with a fork. John strutted by with his pack of friends, slowing just enough to drop a comment. "Careful, people. Don't get too close to Miller. Might end up with a broken arm like Kyle." The table burst into laughter. Ethan didn't even look up. His voice was dry, casual. "Funny, John. You ever think about stand-up comedy? Or do you just practice being a clown full-time?" The cafeteria roared. John's grin faltered for a split second before he plastered it back on. Later that day, John took it further. In the crowded hallway between classes, he slammed his shoulder into Ethan hard enough to rattle his books onto the floor. "Oops," John sneered. "Didn't see you there, criminal." Ethan crouched to gather his books, his jaw tight. He could feel everyone watching, waiting. If he threw a punch, it would be over, proof of every rumor. He stood slowly, brushing off his notebook. His voice was calm, but sharp enough to cut. "You know, John, for someone so obsessed with me, maybe you should start charging rent. I seem to live in your head for free." The crowd burst into laughter again. Even a few of John's own friends couldn't hold it in. John's face went red. "You think you're clever," he snapped. "You think words make you tough." Ethan leaned closer, his tone low but clear. "No. But they make me smarter than you. And honestly, that's enough." The hallway exploded with noise. Some students clapped, others laughed nervously. John's fists clenched, his face twisted in fury. For a moment, it looked like he might swing. But then a teacher appeared at the end of the hall, and John backed off, muttering curses under his breath. Ethan walked away, heart pounding. On the outside, he wore his usual smirk. On the inside, he knew how close it had been. One wrong move, and everything would have collapsed. That evening, Mason listened as Ethan recounted the day. Mason laughed so hard he nearly spilled his drink. "You roasted him in front of the whole school." "That's my brother." Ethan shook his head. "It's not funny. If I had swung at him, it would have been over." Mason's laughter faded. He leaned forward, suddenly serious. "And that's the difference between us. I would have swung. You didn't. Don't ever forget that." For a moment, Ethan just sat there, stunned. Mason was right. And as much as the shadow of his brother weighed on him, in that moment Ethan realized something: he wasn't Mason's sequel. He was writing his own story. By the middle of the week, Ethan was exhausted. His sharp comeback still made the crowd laugh, but every word carried a cost. He went home each night with his chest tight, his mind replaying the same question: what if nothing ever changes? Then, Thursday morning, everything shifted. The intercom crackled after second period, Principal Hayes's voice filling the classrooms. "All students, please report to the auditorium immediately. We have an important matter to address." The air buzzed with curiosity as students filed in. Ethan sat near the back, arms crossed, heart thudding. He knew this was about him. It had to be. Principal Hayes stepped onto the stage, papers trembling slightly in his hand. His eyes swept the room before he began. As you all know, there was an incident last week where a student, Kyle, was injured in the hallway. Many of you have heard rumors about who was responsible. A ripple ran through the audience. Dozens of eyes turned toward Ethan. He stared straight ahead, his expression unreadable. Hayes cleared his throat. Yesterday, after speaking again with Kyle and reviewing additional details, I can confirm the injury was an accident. Kyle tripped when another student dropped a backpack. There was no push. No fight. And no one to blame. Gasps echoed through the room. Some students shifted uncomfortably, others looked directly at Ethan with guilt in their eyes. Hayes continued. I want to make this very clear, Ethan Miller had nothing to do with the incident. The rumors that have been spread were false and unfair. I expect this school to reflect on the damage those rumors have caused. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the auditorium. Then whispers broke out, not accusations this time, but shock. Ethan sat frozen, heat rushing through him. Relief, anger, vindication, it all tangled together until he didn't know what to feel. As students filed out, he caught sight of John. For once, John had no smirk, no clever insult. Just a clenched jaw and eyes that flicked away quickly. Ethan almost laughed at the irony. Words had been John's weapon too, but now they had turned to ash. In the hallway, Lily walked past him. For the first time, she stopped. So, you weren't lying, she said softly. Ethan raised an eyebrow, his smirk returning. I try not to make it a habit. Her lips curved into the faintest smile before she walked away, leaving Ethan standing there with a heartbeat louder than the crowd around him. That evening at home, Mason slapped him on the back hard enough to nearly knock him forward. Told you, kid. Truth always finds a way. Ethan sank onto the couch, shaking his head. Yeah, but it shouldn't have taken this long. It shouldn't have taken me being dragged through the mud just to get here. Mason's grin softened. No, it shouldn't. But you didn't crack. You didn't swing. And that's how I know you're already better than me. For the first time, Ethan believed him. But even as relief washed over him, one thought lingered, it wasn't over yet. There was one conversation he still wanted, needed, to have. With Lily. The next day, Ethan felt lighter walking into school. For the first time in weeks, no one whispered thief or criminal as he passed. The truth had been spoken out loud, and it had silenced more voices than any clever comeback ever could. But the silence wasn't enough. He wanted more than rumors fading away. He wanted to know what Lily thought, the girl whose glance had cut deeper than all the accusations combined. He found her sitting under the big oak tree in the courtyard during lunch, reading a paperback. For a second, his courage faltered. His stomach twisted with the old fear, what if she sees me the same way everyone else did? What if she thinks I'm trouble, no matter what? He almost walked away. But then he heard Mason's words echo in his head, you're not me. Don't live in my shadow. Ethan cleared his throat. Mind if I sit? Lily looked up, surprised, then nodded. Sure. For a few moments, they sat in silence. Ethan picked at the grass, then finally forced himself to speak. So, yesterday. You heard what the principal said. I did, Lily replied softly. I'm glad he said it. You deserve that. Ethan smirked faintly. Yeah, took him long enough. Felt like I was waiting for an overdue library book. Lily chuckled, then grew serious. Ethan. I need to tell you something. When everyone was whispering, when people kept saying it was you. I never actually believed it. Not completely. But I didn't speak up either. And that's what I regret. Ethan blinked, caught off guard. You didn't think I did it? She shook her head. No. I saw the way you looked that day, when Kyle got hurt. You were just as shocked as everyone else. But I was scared to say anything. Scared people would turn on me too if I defended you. Her voice cracked slightly, and Ethan felt his chest tighten. He had imagined her doubting him, lumping him in with the rest. But hearing the truth made something ease inside him. You know, Ethan said, leaning back against the tree, I spent weeks thinking even you thought I was guilty. And that sucked way more than John's big mouth ever did. Lily met his eyes, a faint blush on her cheeks. I'm sorry. I should have been braver. Ethan gave a half smile. Well, I'm glad you said this now. Better late than never. Besides, he tilted his head, teasing. I kind of like the idea of you worrying about me. Lily laughed, shaking her head. You're impossible. Yeah, Ethan said, grinning. But at least I'm impossible and innocent. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt something warm spread through his chest. Not just relief, not just victory, but connection. Someone had seen him for more than the shadow of his brother, more than the rumors. When the bell rang, Lily stood and closed her book. Come on. Let's go back before people think your brother's going to send me a warning note too. Ethan laughed, standing beside her. Don't tempt me. Mason's got a stack of those ready. They walked back together, side by side, and for the first time since stepping into Westwood High, Ethan didn't feel alone.